candid conversations, unfiltered opinions, and humor with Abeg Vex Podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is like one of those things that had to be done. So I'm very excited today to have Alan Lazaros with us. So Alan, you might ask, who is this gentleman? Alan is the CEO of Next Level University, doing great work in letting people refocus and actually develop themselves in a balanced way. So Alan, really excited to have you here. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you for that introduction. I want to start with gratitude. I really appreciate it. For anyone who is out there watching or listening to this, I do not take it lightly to speak into your life because I do believe what you give your attention determines sort of where you put your time, effort, and money, which determines really your future. So I don't take it lightly. Thank you for having me. And also your introduction, I mentioned, you said, how do you want me to introduce you? And I said, CEO of Next Level University. And the reason why is because Next Level University is a place that you go, next level you, pun intended, to reach your potential. So I just turned 36 on Sunday, so I'm Alan version 3.6. And Alan version 3.6 is not perfect, but he is much smarter and stronger and more effective and more aware and more virtuous than Alan version 3.5. And so I think that's kind of what we can all strive for, is just being better tomorrow than we are today.
Beautiful, beautifully said. And, you know, Alan 3.6 is an improvement from 3.5. And I think that should be the focus of all of us, just being better than the person we were yesterday, last year, last decade. So thank you for personifying that. So Alan, you and I were talking before we jumped right on here, right? So we talked about a balance. Can you tell our audience what balance we're striving to really address today?
Yeah, so the words that I like a lot for balance, actually more, is harmonize.
Harmony.
Or synthesize. I think balance can mean 50-50 in people's minds, like a seesaw. And I don't know if there's any such thing as work-life balance in a 50% sort of thing. I'm also a computer engineer, so that's why I said Alan version 3.6, because I just think in numbers. So I'm gonna say, full disclaimer, I'm a computer engineer. I'm a math thinker. Everything is math, formulas, numbers, statistics. And so I need to give that disclaimer. My business partner says every time Alan says I'm an engineer, it gives him the right to be a dick, and he's being he's being playful. But I do think it gives me the right to be objective, and to me, accurate thinking is really important. So yeah, it's you versus your potential, and synthesizing and harmonizing health, wealth, and love. Health is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Wealth is how you earn your money, the difference between a job, a career, and a calling sort of thing. And then how much you make, is that increasing or decreasing based on where the future is going, and then where you invest it. And then love is your intimate relationship, your immediate family, your friends, colleagues, clients, mentors, mentees, your just relationships that extend outward, acquaintances. And if you can dial in those three areas, healthy, wealthy, and in love, to me, that is the ultimate life. And you'll be fulfilled if it's in alignment with who you are, your uniqueness. And if you are fulfilled, what I always say is the world needs more fulfilled people, because fulfilled people don't want to hurt people. Fulfilled people just want to see other people more fulfilled. And so that's the world that I hope we all can work toward. And that's what Next Level University and just my work in general is. All of it kind of centers around that idea.
So can somebody argue the point that, you know, one of these, somebody might be lacking, seriously lacking in one of these areas, you know, health, wealth, and love, and still feel that they're fulfilled?
I've been studying fulfillment a long time. I remember when I was a kid, I was in my early 20s, and this story kind of illuminates where I started thinking about this. So when I was younger, I had a birth father who passed away when I was 2. He was 28. I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14, and my real last name is actually McCorkle. Lazaros was my stepfather's last name. It's a very Greek last name, so when Greek people find me, they say, Lazaros? Doesn't make any sense because you blonde hair, blue-eyed. I used to say not a hair on me, but now I got this goatee going. And but yeah, so my real last name is McCorkle. I'm Irish. It's a big Irish Catholic family. My dad, Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette, and when we were the Lazaroses, we didn't really associate much with the McCorkles. And then my stepfather left, and he took his entire extended family with him. So that was a really hard beginning. So people used to say, these are the best years of your life when I was in high school. And I remember thinking, my goodness, I hope not. And I disagreed so strong. I was like, there's no way this is the best. Little did I know, my life was really, really hard, statistically speaking. That's a lot of loss from a very young age. And also my mom sort of got in a fight with my Aunt Sandy, and we got sort of ostracized from my mom's side of the family too. So in some ways, I kind of lost 3 families by the time I'm 14, and we reconnected with the McCorkles and all that. But ultimately, I never had a really normal childhood. That's a polite way to put it, I would say. And so when I was in my early 20s, my mom and I had this sort of argument once, and she said, why do you care so much about intelligence? Why isn't it enough to just be nice? And I remember thinking to myself, as a computer engineer, that's a really dumb question. Intelligence is really important. What's the difference between a smartphone and a dumb phone, right? The smartphone is more capable. And if you're more capable, you'll be able to design a life that's magnificent. And that's just the way I thought back then. So I said, I looked around when I was a kid, and I observed, and I was very, very existentialist, and I questioned everything. I still do. I think very differently statistically. I don't just do a holiday. I think, why is this holiday existent? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Okay, so the thing I question is I looked around and I saw a lot of really unfulfilled human beings. And I playfully refer to where I grew up as the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. And I was alarmed. I mean, everyone hated their jobs for the most part. They all looked forward to the weekends. They all wanted to party on the weekends. Half the marriages I saw, that you don't even like each other, never mind love each other. This looks atrocious. This looks terrible to me. So I said this to my mom, and this is my early 20s ego version, okay? So keep that in mind. But I basically said, Mom, I'm trying to figure out the formula to not end up old and miserable like everybody else. And I finally, long time, my 30s, I feel like I've got it. I've got the formula down pretty well. Now, the simplest formula, I actually have a sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs digital asset that is my own unique version in the 21st century that has 5 layers, level 1, level 2, level 3, all the way to level 5. And we do it in group coaching, all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, the simplest possible version of reaching your fulfillment is, number 1, it's growth, which is reaching your true potential. I don't believe that you can be fulfilled without growing, without reaching your potential, your unique potential. So that's number 1. You have to reach for your unique potential. Get outside your comfort zone, try new things, meet new people, that kind of thing. The second one is contribution. Why do we grow? We grow so we can contribute. Contribution is service. I'm here right now for free to serve. And that's fulfilling, right? And if I didn't grow and reach my potential, I wouldn't have anything to give, therefore I couldn't serve. So those are the first 2. The third one is the one I sucked at really bad, which is quality of life. And I still work on this one. Quality of life is you get to drive a car that you really value. You get to live in a home that's really nice. You get to go on a trip because you want to. And that's the one that I struggle with because I work basically every day. But most people are overly focused on that one, I think, statistically speaking, and they aren't focused enough on reaching their potential or on their contribution, when in reality, quality of life is usually a byproduct of people who grow and contribute. Not always, but usually. And so if you are growing and contributing and living a higher and higher quality of life, health, wealth, life, and love, you will be fulfilled, even if you are lagging in one of those things. But I do believe that if you're unhealthy, but you're wealthy, you're going to be unfulfilled. If you're wealthy and healthy, but you're not in love, I think you'll also be unfulfilled. And I've seen a lot of mentors over the years. I've had many multimillionaire mentors. I've also had a 1 billionaire mentor. And what I realized very young is a lot of these people really are not in love, and they're certainly not in shape. And for me, I personally didn't want that to happen to me. So I decided to make sure I focus on all 3.
Right. So, to talk about, the Boulevard of Broken Dreams, to talk about, observing people who are married, not liking each other, but staying married, definitely love is not involved if like is not involved. The one thing that I hear, especially with people that are okay where they are, so be it, their careers, be it their occupation, be it their marriages, relationship with others, whatever it is that I'm content, right? There's nothing out there for me. Anything else is greed, right? What would you say to anybody with that mindset who feels like if I want anything other than this, it's just me being greedy? Or in case of a relationship or marriage, the devil you know is better than the angel you don't. Why would I risk going out there? There's nothing for me out there. Nobody will ever love me. Or, I have this children. I owe it to them to stick it through all of this. What would you say to somebody who has a mindset like that?
Well, the complacency piece, I'm actually reading a book right now called The Comfort Crisis.
Okay.
And it's by a man named Michael Reed. No, not Michael Reed. I don't know his last name. I honestly don't. It's called The Comfort Crisis. And I was reading it this morning.
Okay.
And I really do believe that from an evolutionary perspective, we all crave comfort. We want 72 degrees. We want to shower each day. We want running water. We want a comfortable life. And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, it's safe.
It makes perfect sense. It's safe. Exactly. However, here's the problem. In order to build that comfortable life, it's supposed to be challenging. And I remember when I first met my beautiful girlfriend, Emilia, I said, can you have growth without challenge? And she said, no. And I said, can you have challenge without any pain? She said, no. I said, okay, why are we avoiding the one thing that actually creates growth? So here's what I try to do. And I'm not perfect at this by any means, but I would say this is my main focus. When I wake up in the morning, how do I do all I can with all I have? That is a good question. A lot of people are trying to check the box, but here's the problem. Checking the box will never fulfill you. I didn't have to be here. Right now, I'm very grateful. I have 26 business coaching clients. I work directly and indirectly with 63 podcasters. I have 18 team members. I have 2 companies. My girlfriend and I have 3 companies between the 2 of us. I have a house. I have 2 cats and a dog. We don't have any children yet, but all of these responsibilities also force me to grow and be accountable. And when you're accountable and responsible and you're growing, you can contribute more, and that it fulfills you. And so for anyone who's out there who feels complacent, who has convinced themselves that they don't need any more, Jim Rohn is a personal development speaker. And while I don't agree with everything he says, he has one really good quote, which says, if you don't want much, then you don't have to become much. Some people have a job and they go and they check the box. Some people have a career and they are building a career and a resume and a LinkedIn and a cover letter, and they're building a network and they're building towards something. And then some people have a calling. And for me, I had a job when I was a kid. When I was 14, I was a cart kid and a busboy, and I was unsuccessful and unfulfilled. And then I had a career, and I was a computer engineer with a master's in business in corporate. I was an inside sales engineer. I got promoted to outside sales engineering. I sold industrial automation equipment into manufacturing facilities all across New England. My territory was Vermont, Connecticut, and Western Massachusetts. That was a career. When I got in my car accident at 26, that was my quarter life existential crisis, sort of the second chance my dad never got. And that's when I created a calling. That's when I got my calling. And my calling is written right here. You are here to reach your own unique potential. Unique is underlined. And help others do the same. Everything else is secondary. And so I really do want to reach my potential. And for anyone out there who is complacent, you will be maybe more comfortable, but you will never be as fulfilled as you could be.
So on the flip side of that, the other side of the coin is somebody who grew up in an environment of people being complacent, right? People, for lack of a better word, just wallowing in their misery, called being content and, safety, dreaming for better, dreaming and going to, for their calling. And also having kind of, the naysayers around them, like, oh, give it up. We've never, dreamt that big around these parts. What do you say to that person who's fighting against the grain, swimming against the current in a sense to get to where they really want to, given, what you offer at next level you. So what should that person keep in mind? What resources should they seek out? And what should they do in the face of doubt?
Yeah. Yep. So I think there's 2 types of courage that's required. Courage is so important in success and fulfillment. It's so important. The first type of courage is the one that I feel like I was pretty good at. The second one I was atrociously bad at. Okay. The first one is competence courage. That's do the thing, write the cover letter, write the resume, apply to the job, go to the interview, show up to the podcast. that. Competence courage is I can build the castle. Social courage is different. Social courage is stick up for yourself, set and honor clear boundaries, actually tell people what you really believe, even though they might dislike you. That one I was so bad at. And I realized that when I was 14 and sort of, for lack of better phrasing, lost 3 families, the abandonment challenges that created made me sort of fawn socially. I would appease and try to do whatever I could to not lose people. And unfortunately, that kept me it kept me small. I would dumb myself down just to keep relationships, and I would appease. I wouldn't stand up for myself. I wouldn't tell people what I really think or really believe as much as I could have or should have.
Right.
And it's kind of like a light dimmer. If you dim your light, it's safer, but when you dial that up, you might lose people because they might disagree with you and you might get ostracized from the group or whatever. And we all kind of live in this comfort zone between failure and success. We don't want to be a failure compared to our peers, but we also don't want to be so successful that we get ostracized either. So everyone is either afraid that all of you is not enough or that all of you is too much. I was definitely the second one. And it took a lot of social courage for me to lean into. I never used to say I'm an engineer. I would just try to fit in and belong, because belonging is at the core of our being. And engineers don't belong. I don't think normally at all. I'm thinking 50, 60, 70 years from now. I always said my career wouldn't even start till my 50s. So I'm just like this weirdo guy who didn't want to be ostracized from social groups. And so now I have to have the courage to actually say, yeah, I do think a lot of people are lazy. And Kev says, my business partner, he says, well, why are they lazy? Why aren't you just really hardworking? I said, well, that's kind of hard for me to think because I actually think I'm kind of lazy, to be honest. And he's like, well, that's why you're hardworking, because you think you're lazy, so therefore you're working harder to. But ultimately, what it comes down to is everyone struggles with courage. The question is, do you struggle with courage on the social side, or do you struggle with courage on the competence, self-efficacy, self-belief side? And that's the self-belief and self-worth. Self-belief is I believe I can build the castle.
Right.
That's external success. Self-worth is I'm going to protect and honor the castle, and I'm not going to let my friends and family spill beer on the carpets and ruin the towels. And I was definitely the one who struggled with the second one. So you are, if you're out there watching or listening, there's 2 types of people in this world. There's people who are afraid and there's liars. The thing is, we're not afraid of the same thing. My fears are mostly social. I don't struggle with self-doubt a ton when it comes to the competence side of things. I feel very capable. I've always felt pretty capable. Mm-hmm. It's the social side that for me is just, I've never really fit in very well. And so everyone I coach 26 individuals right now, and I've coached hundreds over the years. And so you realize, oh, okay, so I was just on with a woman named Christy earlier, and she's my client. She's the social courage problem. She's super competent. She's hardworking, she's disciplined, she tracks metrics and habits, and she achieves goals. She's amazing. But socially, she is very much doesn't fit in. And so she has to learn how to hold her value socially. And that's her challenge. Whereas a lot of people really deep down don't believe in themselves, and they need to have the humility to start small and sort of build that self-efficacy. In psychology, you can look up self-efficacy. And there's 2 types of self-efficacy. There's external self-efficacy, which is do the thing, be consistent, self-discipline, compound effect. And then there's internal self-efficacy, which is I believe in who I am and my own value. Right. And some people have low self-belief and inflated self-worth. And those are what I call arrogant, sort of entitled. Right. And then there's some people who have high self-belief and they're actually amazing, but they're afraid to show that socially. And so they dim their light constantly, right. To sort of make up for the insecurities of, it's puffer fish and turtle shells. I was the turtle, and I would, deal with a lot of pufferfish people that deep down they don't believe in themselves. So for anyone out there, last piece, think of someone who portrays level 10 confidence. Ask yourself, why would someone with level 10 confidence have level 2 goals?
I like that turtle and pufferfish. That is such a great analogy because it really embodies and puts that, those description into picture. So I meet a lot of people that have the second aspect of things, the social isolation, ostracizing, and loneliness. Humans don't do very well with being lonely, right? We're very social creatures, right? Whether it's within a family unit, friends group, church, synagogues, mosque, you name it, even at work, right? We have people we eat together, we run problems by, we prefer to work with. And when that is threatened, or there's a threat to that, coming to a close or coming to an end, we don't usually do well, right? So, something that you said about, your mom and, your aunt having a disagreement, and it's normal, but we don't always react in a normal sense. And because we don't want to lose that family connection, we hang on to people treating us very badly. And that doesn't just end there. It usually translates into other aspects of life, whether it's work, whether it's friendship, and whether it's like community members. So do you see that correlation? And, especially with your mom, did you see her as a no nonsense person? Like, you wouldn't treat me any kind of way. You're going to treat me the way I want to be treated, or kick rocks.
Yeah. So I think that I think very few people are self-aware, and pre-26, I include myself in that.
Right.
And I think we all have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn as trauma responses through self-preservation. Right. And if you study the psychology of this, all of us are insecure. We're just insecure about different things. Yeah. So some of us are insecure about so for example, I'm someone who's never really been insecure about my intelligence. I've always been very academically inclined, very gifted academically. But I trigger the insecurities of people who are insecure about their intelligence. And instead of them being vulnerable and learning from me, a lot of times they'll puff up, and that'll create conflict. Mm-hmm. And or I'll dial down and pretend they're right when in reality I know they're saying idiotic things. So the point that you asked, though, is self-worth. Some people have low self-worth and they allow people to treat them poorly. My mom, I would not put in that category. I think if anything, my mom probably had a little bit of inflated self-worth. And a lot of people who grew up with caregivers who had inflated self-worth out of compensation for insecurity, usually you become the turtle because they were the puffer.
Right.
Because that's the only way you could coexist. So obviously I can tell that you're the turtle, not the puffer. I can see that. Otherwise you and I would not get along as well. And I would really trigger your insecurities. And I don't. I don't trigger you. Whereas I usually do trigger deeply insecure people who deep down don't feel good enough and don't feel like they are very good at things or very intelligent, but they don't say that on the surface, because if they said that's too vulnerable, and that would be against self-preservation. So these are all survival mechanisms. And if you fall for them, you basically will never be fully in control of your own relationships or your own life.
Yeah, I don't. So I guess I'm fluid. I know situations to be puffer and situations. I don't think I'm ever a puffer because I don't think many people intimidate me. Wow, actually, you know what? Now that you say it, I don't know myself to be a puffer.
You're not a puffer. If you were, I would know it because I would trigger you a lot. Yeah.
I'm not. Okay. Good.
Puffers don't like me. I'll tell you what.
They do not. Wow. I wonder why.
Yeah. I think it's because anyone who has a lot of actual self-belief, it triggers people who are pretending, right?
Oh, wow. Okay. Great observation. So
it took me 30 years to figure that out.
I mean, at least you figured it out. There's some people still learning,
Yeah.
I love it. So for the younger generation, right? So I'm thinking this messaging with everybody who's listening, are people that have actually established themselves in some fashion, right? Whether it's a career, business, personal growth, or personal life, married, in a serious relationship. So for the next generation coming that are observing us and kind of like wanting to start early, for you, that wake up call came at the age of 26, right? So for somebody in their 20s in college who's, charting out their lives, they really want to do something concrete as opposed to partying away your 20 and then figuring it out when you're 40, right? So what would you say to that young man or young lady that is listening that kind of like wants to start concretely figuring out who they are, where they're going, what they really want to do in life?
That's a great question. I'm speaking at my alma mater, WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's kind of like a mini MIT in Massachusetts. It's one of the best engineering colleges in the world, and I'm speaking there next month. Yeah, next month. I have a meeting actually tonight, second meeting with the club that I'm speaking. It's an entrepreneurship club that I'm speaking to. But ultimately, I got on a call recently. It was a blast from the past for me because I'm 36 now, and they're 20, 19, and 18, these students. And it was very weird for me because I just can't believe how old I've become in such a short time. But I also feel very young. So it's just weird. Everything's relative, right? That's the Einstein quote of everything's relative. And so in the grand scheme of things, I'm super young. I'm only 36. But in comparison to them, I'm extremely old. And it's fascinating. But anyways, so I'm actually asking myself that question for this speech. What would I have needed to hear at 18, 19, or 20 to really be convinced of this personal development thing? Because I do regret not being into self-improvement more when I was younger. And the truth is, I didn't have role models that led by example in self-improvement. Self-improvement was not ubiquitous where I grew up. And you know what? Let me just be freaking honest. I am alarmed at how little self-improvement was a focus for anyone in my childhood.
Right.
And of course, I think that because I think self-improvement is what the world needs most. I mean, even being here right now, that's what I'm hoping is, I hope self-improvement is something that spreads. I used to say I want self-improvement to spread like COVID. I don't say that anymore. But COVID grew exponentially 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. And I want self-improvement to spread in that same way. I think that would change the world. It would certainly have changed my world as a kid. So for anyone out there who is of the next generation, I think we need leaders who lead by example. And I never used to have the courage to say this, but I think back to some of the male role models in my life and just role models in general. And I've had some good and some not so good. If you're not leading by example, just shut up. Yeah. Seriously. Because I was told so many things, like you should, but no one did it themselves. And it pisses me off. And so you'll never hear me ever tell you to do something that I'm not doing, ever. And that's my rule in life with my friends, my family, my girlfriend. Like you'll never hear me preaching something that I'm not walking behind the scenes when no one's watching. And that is my rule for myself. After 26, I decided that's going to be my calling, is I'm going to lead by example because that's what I would have needed to see in order to really have it sink in. And I do have to jump because I got a coaching call in 1 minute, but this has been amazing. I'm so grateful. And please reach out anytime if you need anything because this has been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. And for everybody listening to us, I am going to include everything about Alan's business, Next Level You. Please reach out if you need to talk to him and please engage. Let us know what you think about this. And I am looking forward to maybe having him on again. So great guest. Thank you, Alan, for being here and enjoy the rest of your day. All right. Bye-bye.
You as well. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Abeg Vex Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. So join us on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep pushing the boundaries of your world.